for our author study on Jacqueline Woodson, I chose to do my mini lesson on point of view. I decided to choose this topic because understanding the point of view of a fictional story determines whose eyes the reader experiences the story through. And when students are able to identify a point of view, they're then able to think critically about the different parts of the story and how changing the part of the story or the point of view would take away, changes what the reader would take away from that story. So the objectives. Students will be able to engage critically and constructively in oral exchanges of ideas, for example, class discussions. Students will demonstrate an understanding that people have different points of view on a topic. And finally, students will be able to identify the importance of a character's point of view in a story. So to begin the lesson, as a teacher, I would go over the objectives so the students are clear of what they're going to be learning. And then I would remind the students that we had previously read the story Each Kindness by Jacqueline Woodson. And we had reviewed all the major story elements, the characters, the setting, the plot. And then I would let the students know that today we were going to use this story, but we would focus on looking at the story through the lens of point of view. So I'd want to start out the lesson by having students think about what the phrase point of view means to them. So I would give them some think time, and then I would randomly select students to share their ideas and see what my students' background knowledge on point of view already is. After I had seen what they knew, I would then share an anchor chart with them that explains what the point of view is. So point of view is the way in which the author allows you to see and hear the text. It might be told from the first person or the third person. And then finally, the idea of perspective. The perspective is the way that you see something, and it's different for each person. I would then begin the lesson by showing my students an anchor chart that's divided into two sections. It has Chloe's point of view and Maya's point of view. And we had already gone over as a class that the story is told by Chloe, and it's how she sees the events that unfold. So then I would begin to model, thinking about this point of view that the story is told from, but then also how the other character, Maya, in the story, what's her point of view of the events that occur. So I would start in the beginning of the story when Maya has just come into the class and the teacher is introducing her. So I would model for the students that from Chloe's point of view, that the new girl has, from the text it said, the new girl has old ragged shoes and shoes that aren't meant for snow. And I kind of said she was probably thinking, oh, why does she have to sit next to me when the teacher has Maya sit near her and Maya smiles and she doesn't smile back. And then I would model my thinking out loud as, Maya's looking down. She barely said hi to the students. She's very quiet. So from Maya's point of view, she's nervous at this point and to start at a no school. And when she's seated in her seat and smiles at Chloe, I said that Maya's probably thinking that she hopes she makes new friends. So this is showing students that, from the text, we only see Chloe's point of view, but if we think about how another character is feeling, the story would be much different. So I would continue to model for students going between thinking of Chloe's point of view and then going to Maya's for about a few pages to make sure that they are understanding. I would then move on to having students, I would come up with Chloe's point of view, and then I would ask the students and get their input on how Maya might be feeling, or vice versa. I would say, oh, this is, tell me what is this part from Chloe's point of view, and I would say what I believe Maya's point of view. And finally, I would want to give them some time for some independent practice. So I would put them into pairs, and I would have the students turn and talk about a section in the book of what Chloe's point of view is and what they think Maya's point of view is. And then I would bring them back together and have them to share their ideas. So, my lesson is moving from teacher modeling to working together with the students, and finally the students having a little bit of independent practice on their own. Finally, to close the lesson, we would kind of review our objectives, and I would remind the students that the point of view is important because it shows how we see and hear the text, and that how a story could be different if we look at it from another character's perspective. And then the application. So after completing the lesson on point of view, I would have the students write their own version of each kindness, and I would want them to focus it from Maya's point of view. So, which we had, worked on as a group, so they would be familiar with, but they would be able to put their own take on it, and they would write the story as well as illustrate their own version of the story.